I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about male factor infertility. This is something that we sometimes see, even though we are specializing with female factor infertility with low AMH and high FSH, diminished ovarian reserve, and premature ovarian insufficiency. Sometimes we can also see in conjunction with that male factor infertility. We are doing blood chemistry reviews and also not to diagnose, but to educate, and then also looking at semen analysis through functional reference ranges. And a lot of times we get focused on the numbers on the semen analysis and may feel like there's nothing we can do to improve that. So from a functional standpoint, there is a lot of things that we can do to improve it, and really looking at the whole body. And many times in the conventional side of things, you may even be told that semen analysis is normal, but maybe from a functional standpoint, there's missed healing opportunities. So excited for you to listen to this episode. Definitely grab your partner. We are talking all about male factor infertility. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharged Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. There's a lot of information about which supplements are right for fertility. And like most couples I speak with, you are probably taking a lot of supplements. But are these supplements optimizing or harming your fertility? That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens, so that you can prepare your body in the best way for pregnancy. And as you may know, we take a functional approach to fertility. And while supplements are included in your customized protocols, which are based on testing, they are only part of the equation, because there's no pill you can take that will out-supplement the basics, such as poor diet, dysregulated sleep, either moving too much or not enough, and not dealing with chronic stress. So we do recommend basic supplements for both men and women. And these are essential starters that you need to have right now to optimize your preconception health. And I'm excited to offer you a special discount at our Fab Fertile store. You'll receive 15% discount on our professional grade supplements. So simply go to Fab Fertile Store. That's F-A-B fertilestore.com to access the basic supplements, so that you can prepare your body for pregnancy success without wasting time and money on supplements that may not be right for you. Go to Fab Fertile Store, that's fabfertilestore.com, and save 15% on your order. Hey there, thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like, there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about male factor infertility. This is something that we sometimes see, even though we are specializing with female factor infertility with low AMH and high FSH, diminished ovarian reserve, and premature ovarian insufficiency. Sometimes we can also see in conjunction with that male factor infertility. We are doing blood chemistry reviews and also not to diagnose, but to educate, and then also looking at semen analysis through functional reference ranges. And a lot of times we get focused on the numbers on the semen analysis and may feel like there's nothing we can do to improve that. So from a functional standpoint, there is a lot of things that we can do to improve it, and really looking at the whole body. And many times in the conventional side of things, you may even be told that semen analysis is normal, but maybe from a functional standpoint, there's missed healing opportunities. So excited for you to listen to this episode. Definitely grab your partner. We are talking all about male factor infertility. Hey, Justine, excited to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okie dokie. We are talking about male factor infertility, and we're going to talk about some of the themes that we see with the couples we work with, the men in particular. But first of all, we're going to be talking about the semen analysis. And we're looking at this through functional reference ranges, which are for healthy people. And we do this the same when we do the blood chemistry review, and we're looking at it through functional reference ranges. So it's just a tighter reference range, and it flags it before it actually goes to disease. This is many times where you could have had maybe someone looked at your semen and you were told it was okay, or maybe it was on the low normal side of things. And you're like, oh, okay, it's not too bad. This is not to panic anyone, but it is to see, we're always looking for healing opportunities. Why hasn't it worked? And, we're typically dealing with female factor infertility with low AMH and high FSH and diminished ovarian reserve and premature ovarian insufficiency. And we often, some of the time we'll see there's male factor infertility in there as well. And then even men coming to us just with male factor. So I wanted to give you guys some things to think about today. Again, we don't focus in on the semen analysis. Like, we look at the semen analysis, we'll see if something's out of range, but then we're looking at the whole body to see what's been missed. Let's talk about the different levels for the semen analysis, and we'll go through them and kind of have you have Justine explain there what we're looking for.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that can be measured with a semen analysis, and they sort of all matter little by little. Basically, the numbers we're looking for in order to be able to have a successful conception, it really sort of takes everything sort of being good enough, basically. And what we've noticed is that over the years, the cutoff as to what qualifies as healthy enough for a semen analysis, that those numbers have gotten smaller and smaller, basically. So as we see numbers start to get lower and lower over time, that more and more the doctors are saying that that's fine. And so, so that's one of the things that we've seen, is that the standards have become different over the last so many years. And so ultimately, from a functional perspective, we're not looking for do we meet the bare minimum requirements, but are we actually in a place where things are at a really good, healthy level? And so starting from the top with volume of semen collected. So basically, the standard range that a doctor would be looking for is anything above 1.5 milliliters. But we know that ideally we want there to be somewhere between 2.5 and 5 milliliters. So that's the first measurement. And then when people talk about sperm count, we're really talking about how many sperm per milliliter, right? And so the sort of standard Western cutoff right now is about 20 million. We really know that you really want to be at least somewhere in the range of between 80 to 100 million. And even over 100 million is even better. And so really that's just about pure numbers. And then we've got a few other measurements that happen. So motility is one. That's really about what percentage of the sperm are actually able to swim and start to make it toward their destination, the egg, of course. And we've got morphology, and that one's about the percentage of sperm that do not have deformities, which it's totally normal for most of the sperm to have deformities. So the numbers we're talking about here for motility is we would like to see it above 50% or so. So 50% or more of the sperm are actually able to swim. A doctor would be looking for 40% or better. And then morphology, we're looking at 12% or less having, or 12% or more being deformity free, basically. And a doctor would be looking for 4% or better. And then there are a handful of other different measurements that happen. So things like progression. So how good of swimmers are the sperm, basically. And fragmentation is another one where it looks at, are there damages to the DNA within the sperm, which then of course makes the sperm not necessarily able to do their job as sperm, but also not necessarily able to turn into good, healthy babies with all of the DNA pairs. And then we've got a few other markers related to the semen quality itself. So one is pH level. So this is how acidic things might be. And when we have pH that's off, when things are too acidic, sometimes the sperm can't always survive because the environment is just too acidic. And then liquefaction, which is how long it takes for semen to become liquefied so that it's not sort of stuck in this more gelatinous state. And instead, the sperm had the ability to sort of break free and start to swim toward the egg. And so all of those things matter in their own way. But if we break it down just by pure numbers, I did a quick little sort of mock-up of what the numbers look like. And if we're using sort of standard functional ranges for what the volume should look like and how many sperm per volume, and the correct motility of 50% or better, and the morphology of 12% or better, and we're looking at about 21 million viable sperm, roughly. So that's the ideal situation. And that's what it takes for there to be enough sperm basically to make it to the egg. And then there are of course other factors, right? So like vaginal health makes a difference, right? And so it's a goofy way to say it, but the vagina is sort of a hostile environment, right? It's meant to kill off things so that there aren't things, so that things aren't able to survive there that aren't supposed to be able to survive there. And so the sperm sort of have to be in numbers. So in like a troop, basically, where the ones sort of on the outside tend to die off because of the acidic environment of the vagina. And the ones on the inside are the ones that actually have had the ability to sort of make it. And so we're looking at about 21 million sperm being sort of the normal, quote unquote, normal of what we're looking for. And I pulled together a quick case study last night of one set of test results, and with the lower amount of volume and the lower count and the lower morphology and the lower motility, we ended up in that particular case with 4.3 million sperm. So it sounds like it's still a lot, but we're really looking at about 20%. And so sort of, with every measurement, if we're low by even just a little bit, it has a pretty big impact on the overall level of numbers. And sometimes, while it's still certainly possible to conceive with 4 million sperm, it makes it significantly more challenging, right? And it makes it more challenging for enough of the sperm to actually like flow in this troop, so to speak, for enough in the center to sort of make it to the egg. And so ultimately, we want to do everything we can do to reduce stress on the body, because everything we do to reduce stress on the body really has an impact on all of these numbers improving.
Absolutely. And so it is, although, you could be told that things are normal, it is to dig a little deeper and see, what potentially could have been missed. And a lot of the times, I think it's it still is a stigma. I think it's improving with men, and sometimes not even wanting to get a semen analysis if there's miscarriage or people or a couple is struggling. And I'll ask, how's the partner's semen analysis? Oh, he hasn't even gotten one yet, which is interesting. And the woman at that point probably has gone through a lot of invasive, like having her tubes checked and looking at things structurally. And, she may have done a lot of changes to her diet and toxins. And not to say the male partner, typically what we found, wants to help, wants to do, what is necessary, but they may not really know what they can do. So our thing is all about really empowerment, where you're like, wait a minute, there's steps I can take to really optimize health. And so the first one we're going to talk about is like the diet piece. So we start off our couples We have them both do the elimination diet, and that's really the gold standard to determine if there is a food sensitivity. Definitely check out how and why to do the elimination diet. We run you through the exact steps of this and why it's important when you're trying to conceive. And so if your body's under attack by a seemingly even healthy food, people can be, pounding down lots of avocados, or we've got people intolerant to lettuce, which I've shared before. Your body can mount an immune response to that. So doing the elimination diet can then identify the food sensitivities for you, and then we tweak it further with food sensitivity testing. Anything you wanted to say there, Justine, with diet and male factor?
Yeah, just, it's really a unique thing with our food sensitivities. Everyone is different, and there are certainly foods that tend to be more inflammatory and to have sensitivities more often than other foods. And so we know that these are things like gluten and soy and dairy that really tend to be problematic for most of the people that we work with, and for most of us, basically, most adult humans. But then there are other foods that are health foods, right? Quote unquote health foods that may not be healthy for you. And I know one of the things that always comes to mind for me was in one of my very first food sensitivity tests was I discovered I had sensitivities to cranberries and to broccoli, among many other things. But those two always stick out to me because it's like, oh, man, I thought I was doing a good thing by having those in my diet, right? I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And those are healthy foods. They're jam-packed full of vitamins and minerals. But for me, they were toxic, right? They weren't good for me. They were causing an inflammatory response. They were causing my immune system to get irritated. And they were causing me further issues downstream. And so that's why we do the elimination diet, is that we get rid of the things that are most likely to cause problems. And then we test them as we bring them back into the diet. We're able to see, did we have any kind of setback when we brought them back in? And that's really how you know whether or not any of those foods are really an issue for you.
Absolutely. And then let's just talk about some themes that we see with male factor. Well, like the first one we see is the food sensitivities. And so that it is really to dig into that piece, do the elimination diet, is to say, check it out on the podcast there. We also have, if you go to Fertility Diet Freebie, there's a whole meal plan where we take you through essentially the elimination diet, and there's all chef prepared recipes, so you can go and check that out. So Fertility Diet Freebie, download it. There's 5 days worth of recipes, so you can get rolling, and it's all free. So identify those. Another one we see is low stomach acid. So that's an interesting one. Yeah, let's talk about that, Justine.
Yeah, we see this a lot. Low stomach acid can happen for a lot of reasons. But, one of the things that happens that gets the ball rolling on low stomach acid sometimes is that we have signs of what sometimes our doctor thinks is too much stomach acid, right? And so sometimes we take an antacid, right? So something like a Rolate or a Tums or a prescription medication like a Nexium, or there's a handful of other ones out there. Pepcid, I think, is another one. And that actually lowers our stomach acid. But in reality, if we have any kind of reflux going on, or heartburn, or anything sort of in the esophagus area, it's usually a symptom of not quite enough stomach acid. And we have little bits bubbling up because there's not enough stomach acid in our stomach, and our food goes down into our stomach and is struggling to break down all the way. And so it's sort of sitting there in the stomach, sort of fermenting basically, and little bits start to bubble up. And that's when we get reflux or heartburn. And so the solution actually is more stomach acid rather than less. But in some cases, it's been caused by an infection that we see quite often called H. pylori, which is a little bug that likes to live in the stomach. It doesn't always cause problems for everybody, but we do know it tends to lower stomach acid a bit. And that's because it really likes an environment that's slightly less acidic than what our stomachs are naturally. And so it actually makes chemical changes in our stomach to make the environment that it loves, that it can thrive in, so that it can hang out there happy and healthy. The result is that we end up with lower stomach acid. And when that happens, again, that's why we get the reflux and the heartburn. Our food goes down into our stomach after we swallow it down. And if it can't break down well enough, it just sort of hangs out there until eventually it breaks down enough to move into our small intestines. And that's where we really do the absorption of our food, of our minerals and our vitamins into our bloodstream, so that our body can really deliver those nutrients all over the body, right, to power everything throughout the entire body. But when that happens, when the stomach acid is low and the particles are not small enough when they go down into the lower part of the gut, those particles sometimes don't ever break down quite small enough. And now we're struggling to absorb all the vitamins and minerals from the good food that we're eating. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. Basically, we don't get enough. We get malabsorption, which can lead to malnutrition even, right? So even if you're eating plenty every day and you're eating good, healthy foods, we can be malnourished. The other thing that happens is it ends up all having to come out the other end, right? Anything that couldn't break down small enough just becomes poop. And now it's more work for us to actually get that out of our body. It's something our body has to work through and deal with and get it out of us rather than actually it being something that nourishes us. And so that all happens from stomach acid being a little bit on the low side. And so a lot of times, like I said, it comes from this H. pylori infection is one source. And then a lot of times we, unknowingly thinking we're doing the right thing, we can make it worse with things like Tums or Rolaids or any of the prescription medications that tend to lower acid in the stomach.
This was the case for my husband for years, where 15 years ago, he was he thought he was having a heart attack because of the acid reflux. He was doing Tums all the time. He'd be up, propping himself up in bed. And then we addressed there was H. pylori. Although, they found it first in me, and then his didn't come back with it. And then, but the first pass through, sometimes with the stool test, sometimes it doesn't show up. So he always says that I gave it to him. And I'm like, well, what about that? But anyways, and so had a lot of low stomach acid for years and not absorbing it. Then it impacted his sex hormones like testosterone. So it's like this downstream effect of something's going on. And then we do something that we think is the right thing, which then just makes it worse. So that for him went on for years. But it's since been rectified. Yeah. And then the poor mineral balance. So we see this where we do the hair tissue mineral analysis test as part of our couples coaching program with the Fab Fertile Method. And we see, where the minerals are imbalanced. What do you want to say there?
Yeah. So mineral balance matters a lot. It matters for our hormones. It matters for our thyroid. It matters for our adrenals. It matters for basically everything. Minerals are our spark plugs in the body, and we just can't run, efficiently and at 100% without everything being at the levels they're supposed to be at. And so this again comes from that absorption issue, right? So if our stomach acid is lowered, or if there are any other issues going on with the gut, then we're struggling to absorb all of our nutrients. And that can lead to mineral imbalance. And we get imbalances, like I said, in sort of various places throughout the body. And, ultimately, if you think about it, right, the body needs, X number of this vitamin and X number of that vitamin, as well as minerals. And this is on a daily basis. If our diet isn't great, right, so if we have some junk food in our diet, that was space that we filled with junk food, that we really needed nutrients during that meal. And then the other thing is if we're, even if we're eating good food, but there is a challenge with our gut, with our stomach acid or with any other part of our gut, then we're not breaking down and absorbing enough of those nutrients. And so the body really has to decide which parts of the body get it. If we need so many units of one vitamin or mineral in a day, the body has to say, okay, do I prioritize the heart and the lungs or the digestive tract or the immune system or the reproductive system? And it really has to decide. And ultimately it has to decide on things that are going to keep you alive right now, right? So it always has to prioritize the heart and the lungs. It always has to prioritize giving some to your muscles so that you're actually able to get up and walk around and move. And so sometimes some of the things that take a back seat are the things that aren't as critical in the moment. So things like our reproductive system, our immune system, our digestive system. And so ultimately making sure that we have good balance with our minerals, that we're eating good foods, that our gut's in good shape, sort of all of it really matters. All of it plays a role in, are we getting enough nutrients so that the body has everything it needs to make all the hormones it needs, to make all the testosterone and the estrogen and progesterone, which men have those hormones as well, to make all of those so that everything's just sort of humming along and all of our numbers are good everywhere.
The next one we see is that a low immune system. So we can see that on the stool test that we do. We're running the GI map test in conjunction with the other tests. So we're typically doing the food sensitivity, a GI map test, and a hair tissue mineral analysis, as well as a blood chemistry review, plus a semen analysis with men. And then we can see on the stool test there that the secretory IgA would be low, which is an indicator of a low immune system. What did you want to say there?
It's sort of, as we talk through things with clients, and in general, it's like everything seems to come back down to the gut in one way or another, right? And that's because, every bit of energy, every resource that powers basically everything that happens in our whole body comes through our mouth, right? It comes from the food that we put in our mouth. And ultimately, it's like we need to stack the deck in our favor as far as making sure that the food that's going into our mouth is good, nutrient-dense food to begin with. But also we need to make sure that our gut's in good shape in order to get everything that we need to get from it. Otherwise, really sort of everything on down the line has potential to suffer, right? If we're getting malnourished, if we're not, so say we're taking in 3,000 milligrams of potassium in a day, but we're only absorbing 2,000 of them. And really we needed 4,500 to begin with. Again, the body has to prioritize and has to decide what's most important to keeping you alive today and tomorrow and the next day. And so ultimately it's like everything comes back down to the gut. Most of our immune system is in the gut, where we absorb all of the nutrients that powers everything in our body comes back down to the gut. And it matters not only like how well are we digesting our foods, but do we have unfriendly microbes that are causing us issues, right? Because they can cause damage to the gut and they can steal our nutrients, right? So good bacteria actually help us break down our food, help us digest our food. Bad bacteria actually just steal our nutrients, eat our nutrients, and leave us with nothing but a toxic byproduct, basically, that does little minute amounts of damage to our gut. And so that really makes a difference in how many resources we're taking in and we're able to actually absorb and use on a daily basis, which affects every single part of the body.
And then blood sugar imbalance. We see this a lot. We've done a number of episodes on that. So definitely check out what we do, like a deep dive on blood sugar and what to look for, that roller coaster piece. But I guess briefly here for blood sugar, like if you've got cravings, sugar cravings, if you're feeling hangry, if your mood swings are popping all over the place, and that's some signs of blood sugar, but definitely some other more of the common ones. Can you talk about other signs and kind of what to look for there?
Yeah. So if you're one of those people where you have to eat every so often, or if you start to get any kind of symptoms between meals, that usually suggests that there's some level of blood sugar imbalance. There are other signs too, like, in general, just feeling sort of tired, feeling sort of weak. And depending on how intense it is for you, I know in my case, it would get to the point where I would get shaky, I would get dizzy, I would get weak, I would get sick to my stomach, I would have a really bad migraine come on. And I suffered with those for years before I had any idea that it had anything related to blood sugar. Nobody ever told me it was related to blood sugar. Actually, in fact, when I went to a doctor and I asked about possibility of blood sugar issues and diabetes, I was chastised for it, because how dare I diagnose myself with that? It's a situation where it's just trying to read little subtle clues may help give you an indication. And if you do have question about it, there's no reason you can't go ahead and get yourself a blood glucose monitor from the corner drugstore or the grocery store. They're usually pretty inexpensive. And that's the best way to find out whether you're having a little bit of imbalance there. But the good news is in almost all cases, it can be rectified, right? It's just a matter of sort of learning the little tips and tricks. And we talked more about that in that other podcast on blood sugar, but basically learning the tips and tricks to eat in a way that sort of helps restore the balance with your blood sugar. But ultimately, keeping blood sugar balanced is really, really important, because the amount of sugar in our blood really matters. It's a really fine balance. There's a really specific range that we have to stay within in order for our body to be happy. And anytime we go outside of that range, whether we fall too low or we spike too high, the body sort of panics. And it's because we really have to stay within this range in order to be safe. Otherwise, we're really at risk for really being in bad shape and possibly even dying. And so the body's constantly managing this, right? It's constantly using insulin and using cortisol, our stress hormone, to make sure that blood, when it spikes, it comes back down to a normal level. And if it sinks too low, it comes back up to a normal level. And so throughout all of this time, it wants to stay in this pretty stable range. If it doesn't, the body's constantly under stress, just trying to manage this roller coaster, right? Because if it goes too high, the body goes, oh, this can't happen. This is unsafe. And it shoots out some insulin to bring it back down. And then if it drops too low, the body goes, oh, this can't happen. That's not safe. And it sends you signals. It puts out some cortisol to raise the blood sugar. It gives you signals, right? The feeling tired or the hangry or the whatever it may be, so that it tells you to stop what you're doing and to have something to eat. And so when your body's sort of riding this roller coaster all day long, that's a significant amount of resources, right? Again, we talked about the body having enough resources from the food that we're eating. We can only get so many if our digestion is impaired, but then also if our body's having to use so many of them to manage things like our blood sugar balance, it has fewer resources yet to deal with to give to our reproductive system for making hormones and to our gut in order to keep our gut in really good shape. And so it's all part of the same system, but basically blood sugar balance is just one more important part of the picture, that it's really drawing from the resources that our body has to be healthy if it's constantly managing this up and down with blood sugar.
Yeah, it's really important. You know your body best, and it's to be your own advocate. And if someone's telling you, it's all in your head, or it doesn't seem right, like keep going and, find someone that's going to listen, because it's, and, to be dismissed, it seems more prevalent. I don't know if I can say this, but more prevalent with women's issues than men. But still, I think it's not, in this case with male reproductive health, sometimes it's not even being investigated, where the man is all focused on the woman. Not always, and I'm generalizing, but that could be the case. Okay, so the next one is lipids. And we see this off a lot with, let's talk about the triglycerides and then the cholesterol. We've done some other deep dives on this, so just briefly, so what people can look for.
Yeah, we see this quite often with our male clients where the lipids are off. The cholesterol, triglycerides, the good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. And ultimately, we need enough cholesterol, right? We want to have cholesterol in our body because cholesterol is a primary ingredient for our body making hormones, and hormones are what control a good, healthy reproductive system. But we can have cholesterol either be too low or be too high for a variety of different reasons. So sometimes it's too low if we're not taking in enough cholesterol. Sometimes it's too low if we have some, what we call oxidative stress, which is basically the opposite of antioxidants. So we need to have plenty of good antioxidants in our diet, and we need to avoid things that cause oxidative stress. So things like toxins, chemicals, pesticides on non-organic foods, overexercise, some medications, things like that. When cholesterol gets too high, it can come from a variety of different reasons. So one is absolutely if we're getting bad fats in our diet, right? So if we're stopping for fast food a handful of times a week, that absolutely contributes to elevated cholesterol. But we also see it in people that are eating pretty healthy meals, right? And in eating foods from home. And it's not that they're getting too much cholesterol. In a lot of cases, it's that the liver is a little bit challenged. And so it just basically goes to show again that everything in the body is connected, right? And so if the liver's a little sluggish, well, it's not a big deal. There are ways we can work on that too, right? Mm-hmm. There's lots of detox therapies. We talk about castor oil packs. There are supplements that can help. But usually it's a matter of the liver not being able to clear out the old used up cholesterol. So it sort of builds and builds in the body. And that's when we get cholesterol levels being too high. And so this is really important because, it's really an indication as to how well our cardiovascular system is doing, how well our body's able to utilize the cholesterol that we do have, that we need to make hormones out of. And it's an indication as to whether or not there's some challenge with our liver, which is our biggest, or it's not the largest, but it's the most important detox organ, and whether or not it's able to continue to move toxins out, because toxins are yet again one more thing that has potential to affect our reproductive health.
Another one we see is low vitamin D with male factors. So being in the single digits or in the teens, you want it to be between 60 to 80. And it could be, gut infections, autoimmunity, thyroid issues could be potentially, and other things potentially why vitamin D may be low. And obviously it's, part of our basic supplements. We're having people supplement with vitamin D3, K2. You need the cofactor of the K2, which is important to help the body absorb it. And then you want to also be testing with that. But ours is also, while you're supplementing, we want to sort of see, why it's low to begin with. Anything you want to say there?
Yeah, and so the vitamin D being low, that can also come down to the gut, right? Are we not absorbing enough of it? Or bile flow, which is also another part of the gut, but basically, are we able to break down our fat soluble vitamins? And we need good fast flowing bile in order to do that. And sometimes we end up with some sludgy bile, which again, everything we talk about on this podcast, right? There's a solution for, we've got a solution for basically mm-hmm. everything. So mm-hmm. if anything we're talking about sounds scary, it's not scary. It's fantastic when we find these results in testing, because now we know exactly what to work on. It's like we didn't have answers and we didn't have answers. Now we have all the answers and we know exactly what to do. But vitamin D, again, it can be related to a gut issue, but a lot of times it's related to not getting enough sunlight. And so sometimes, we supplement, of course, to try to bring the levels back up, especially when they're very low like that. But getting some midday sun, right? So sometime between like 11:30 and 2:30-ish to actually be out in the sun for 15 or 20 minutes. To your skin's tolerance, of course. We're absolutely not telling you to get pink or to burn. So if you're out in the sun and it's a bright, hot, sunny day and, anything beyond 5 minutes is not going to be good for your skin, then absolutely go back in or cover yourself up or whatever you need to do. But a little bit of sun exposure plays a huge, huge role in how much vitamin D our body can synthesize. But we today, as adults in this world, basically, we spend most of our time indoors. We get relatively little exposure to the sun, or we get it, we do a good job on the weekends sometimes, but we really need to have exposure to the sun basically every day in order to have good high quality vitamin D. And vitamin D, of course, is another vitamin that plays a role in our sex hormone health, right? So our testosterone and our estrogen and our progesterone.
And then we also see dehydration comes up regularly on the blood chemistry review. So you want to aim for 50 to 75% of your body weight in ounces in water per day. Many times people, are not drinking enough water. That was certainly the case for me, where I would, drink a couple glasses a day and then pee, once a day, and thought that was great. So it does become that you pee more. It becomes potentially potentially annoying, but you're hydrated. And actually now when I don't have the water, I just feel off. It's, you don't know how poorly you were feeling until you start feeling awesome. So being dehydrated can then impact your whole body.
Yeah. I just had a client yesterday tell me that was the absolute most important number one thing that he got out of working together, was that he thought he was doing fine with water, and come to find out he was grossly underestimating his needs for water. Yep. I've also had clients, have suffered from constipation for decades. And if we just get the water intake right in the first week or two, that's just completely resolved. And that's not true for everyone, but in that case it was. Water just plays such a huge role, right? So not only do we need the water to really hydrate all of our cells, but also the water is constantly what helps us to be flushing things that aren't supposed to be in the body out. So water's just super critical. Can't talk enough about how much needs to be water. And we're really talking about water. So herbal teas will count towards your water intake, but anything caffeinated and anything carbonated doesn't count. So your coffee doesn't count, your green tea, your black tea doesn't count, your diet soda doesn't count. So we're really talking about stuff that's mostly pure water.
Yeah, and you want to make sure it's filtered. And then thyroid dysfunction. This is something we see with our female clients as well as our male clients with thyroid dysfunction. Either there's Hashimoto's, either there's hypothyroidism, either subclinical thyroidism. Typically more with the men, we're seeing more of a hypo and a subclinical. What's your take there?
Yeah, so the thyroid, again, it's just one part of this massive system called our bodies, that basically everything has to be in great working order in order for our reproductive system to be in good order. And the thyroid controls our metabolism. So it controls our burn rate. How quickly are we using all of the resources that we're bringing into our body? And when the thyroid is low, it's basically the body saying, okay, we're going into low battery mode. We're going to power down so that we can conserve resources. It's just like what your phone does when it hits 10% or 20%. And it really sort of prioritizes, again, it's like your body in survival mode, and your body's prioritizing the things that are going to keep you alive right now, but not so much the things that don't matter if you don't survive the moment. And so the things that matter less, sadly, are our reproductive system, our digestive system, our immune system. Because ultimately, if we go back to this primitive idea of, the stress hormone being related to, we need to be able to survive running for our lives from a tiger, or a boulder landing on us that we need to suddenly have superhuman strength to get it off of us, or we might not make it. And so the thyroid is involved in all of that. It's sort of a master gland with master hormones that really sort of tell the rest of the body at what level it should be doing different things.
The last one we see is low protein intake, and that shows up on the blood chemistry review. And we're doing that because many times people, especially if you're doing a vegetarian diet, which can be fine for some people. So it is to make sure you're getting adequate amount of protein. So we are seeing it's to measure it first, to see if it's right for your body. What did you want to say there?
Yeah, so we see this quite a lot, some evidence of low protein intake. And so sometimes it's that you're actually not taking in enough protein. And other times it's that we've got something going on with the gut, that you're taking in plenty of protein, but the body's just not able to break it down well enough. Which again, it leads to this situation where we've got some malabsorption going on and consequently some malnutrition, right? So you were taking in plenty, but we weren't absorbing enough. And so now we didn't get enough. And then it also makes more poo to come out the other end. So ultimately it's about, are we getting enough protein? That's the number number one thing. And the number two thing is our gut able to do what it needs to with it?
Absolutely. And then as far as some lifestyle suggestions, here for sleep, you want, basically 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, 9 being your goal. Looking at the blue light blocking glasses, they're sponsored by podcasts, and get a discount on that by going to Blue Blocks and using the code Get Pregnant Podcast, get 15% discount. So you put those on at sunset, and then that blocks the blue and green light from all your screens. And really that impacts your melatonin production, which then will impact both egg and sperm health. So looking at that and really prioritizing your sleep. Exercise is to tolerance. Anything you want to say about exercise there, Justine?
Yeah, so there are some pretty basic guidelines, right? Exercise should be 6 or more days a week, every single day, unless you're feeling sick, basically, in which case you get a pass. But on days when you just don't feel like it, those are the days where you at least should go for a walk. But basically, yeah, it's to your tolerance, like you want to be challenged, but you don't want to feel spent afterwards. If you feel spent after a workout, that means you actually caused a net negative to your health. So it's really got to be matched to your fitness level and to how you're feeling on that particular day. And so get out there, get that movement in. Whatever exercise makes you happy is the exercise you should be doing. Whatever keeps you sticking with it is what you should be doing. And so whether that's the same every day or different every day, doing it is more important than the specifics. But this sort of middle ground of you want to be challenged, but not feel spent afterwards, that's the most important part.
And then the mental emotional side of things, creating boundaries, asking for help, delegating. If you're working more than 50 hours a week, see where you can pull back, really addressing the mental emotional stress. I think in our society as men, women are more apt to go to the doctors earlier than men, more apt to kind of reach out for help, whereas men, even on the fertility journey, may not even tell any of their, family or close friends. It's just not something that's discussed. Hopefully the conversation is changing around that, and men are feeling more comfortable to open up. That's what we coach couples. So then the man can have the male partner can have a voice in this, and being able to, they don't need to be strong, and being the one that's taking on all the burden and feeling that they can't equally lean on their partner. Sometimes that feeling you need to be strong, and then it can kind of pull you guys apart. So it is to share how you're feeling with this and what support that you may need, be it therapy or, coaching, whatever feels right for you, but really getting honest about those mental emotional stressors, because they're key. And I think a lot of times it might just keep going. I'm fine. And, that was the case for me. Just keep going. I'm fine. And then I wasn't. So, right now, if you've got something going on with your sperm, it is to look at all the factors, right? Not all at once, because it can be overwhelming, but what are some healing opportunities? Where can you pull back? Where can you ask for help? Anything you wanted to say there?
Yeah, I just, like you said, there's always been this stigma wrapped around, anything being imperfect, any kind of health issue for a man, especially related to semen quality. Ultimately, it's like we see, it's like it's been ingrained into us, right? Like men are not allowed to be anything less than this constant, perfect rock, right? But we know that that's not the reality. We know that we've created a situation where you guys are between a rock and a hard place on this stuff. But ultimately, it's really important, that you do what you need to get your health, in a good place, and to be honest about, what you're really feeling, right? Because, and we even see this in intake forms, right? Wherein men are in a lot of cases, they're suffering. They've got lots of little health issues, but they've been told, no, man up. You don't need to, unless something is really big or you're really in trouble, then you need to just take care of it on your own and don't complain and don't talk about it. And so we consistently see men underreport what's going on for them.
Yeah.
And so if we were to give it a score when we fill out intake forms related to symptoms, the men consistently have significantly smaller scores than the women. And it's, after we worked together for a while, come to find out there was lots of dysfunction there too. There was lots of ways in which they were suffering, and lots of ways we could have helped and we could have made it better. But if we don't know, right, if we don't talk about it, then there isn't anything we can do. And so ultimately what we find is that men underreport. And so the point here that I'm trying to make is that, your health issues are absolutely every bit as important. And it's important that we attend to them. And then it's important that you find the right help, whether it's physical help or mental, emotional help or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. And then the environmental factors. I think some of us know this around the toxins we're exposed to. the plastics, not sitting in a hot tub, taking the phone away from, well, first of all, just take the phone out of your pants and make sure it's not on your body. That EMFs can impact sperm quality. Some of these things I think are a little more widely known, but you definitely want to make sure you're opting for organic, non-GMO foods. You want to switch your plastics out for glass or stainless steel. And you want to make sure, you're not sitting in hot tubs or anywhere where there's basically heat there for, anything that's causing heat to the testicles. So that's not recommended. Anything you wanted to say there?
Yeah, so just take care of that area, right? If things are being pulled up way close to the body or really loose, that's your sign that your body's trying to adjust the temperature. So do your best to try to give it what it needs to have the right temperature.
As far as supplements we're recommending, we take a very targeted approach with supplements and looking at your testing. So looking at those functional tests we talk about. So food sensitivity testing, stool testing, looking at your hair tissue mineral analysis, and then also the blood chemistry. We do have basic supplements we recommend for both men and women, which would be a multi, a magnesium, CoQ10, omega, a probiotic, and a vitamin D3K2 would be the basic ones. And then there's some other ones such as, what's your take on zinc?
Zinc has potential to drive down sodium. And sodium's a really important mineral, and we see sodium low in a lot of people. And so zinc is one of those minerals that I find to be a really important mineral and can be really valuable. But it's really important to know what your zinc levels are looking like and what some of your other minerals are looking like before knowing whether zinc is really right for you.
There's a lot of generalized recommendations in the fertility space for both male and female fertility. So our thing is really test, don't guess, and really figure out what's the exact, recommendations that are right for you. So any final thoughts on male fertility issues?
Yeah, just don't ignore it, right? We think that fertility issues primarily are a woman's issue. And obviously, as we've sort of explained here in this podcast today, men's health, sperm health plays a really big role as well. And so it's really important and a really easy thing to assess for, right? So it's a super easy procedure in order to be able to do a semen analysis, to be able to find out, do we really have some issues that are presenting some challenges here?
Absolutely. Thank you. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharged Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. You may be taking supplements that instead of optimizing your fertility, may be harming it. That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens. Simply go to Fab Fertile Store, that's F-A-B Fertile Store.com to receive a 15% discount on our basic supplement recommendations for preconception health. That's fabfertilestore.com. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.